today. We'll go through some of this. And what we want to start with is sort of talking about what sort of experience marketing is, how you can integrate it into what you guys are working on, and talking through personalization, gifting. And I think the most interesting part, in my opinion, is really why in our wild and crazy 2020 world, we think that some of the experience marketing is more important than ever. Cool.
Yeah, so Tracy, I just saw your comment about your son finally sleeping through the night. That's great. I'm jealous. You're gonna have to share some tips with me. Look, we built this platform, Postal.io, to fill a really specific gap. We've seen companies like Outreach, SalesLoft, HubSpot on the marketing automation side, Marketo. They've built amazing tools for companies to really improve automation on the sales engagement side and on the marketing side. We don't believe that companies have really figured this out with standard gifting or direct mail. And so we wanted to build a platform that allows companies to remove the need for those marketing closets, those swag closets that a lot of companies have. And, all the reps used to go in there and pull out their pieces of swag and then send them out to their clients or prospects. There's just a better way to do it. So we've built the automation that allows companies to be able to utilize the tools that they have typically utilized on the sales engagement and marketing side. Add in the ability to send in gifts and direct mail in their cadences, sequences, workflows, and do it with little to no effort. And so, we've added the scalability, we've added the automation, and we continue to improve upon all of the things that are offered. And we're, in the process of working with some of our clients to add some really cool, unique additional items and also move towards experiences, which would be great.
Cool. And I think to sort of start on this, one of the reasons that we wanted to sort of join in on this with the Postal team was I think we work with so many customers that are trying to do gifting strategies and experience marketing strategies and trying to execute against these on the agency services side. And it's like, here's my big spreadsheet. Now I have to pick a provider. I need to send out this email to everybody. They fill it out. I export that list. Now I have to go send it over to a provider. And I think the biggest thing that there's opportunity for here is using an automation tool and also something that goes multi-channel. So we typically see folks who have vendors for physical gifts. They have vendors for handwritten notes. They've got vendors for different direct mail campaigns, and being able to consolidate all of that and look at it as a multi-channel, we think is really the unique perspective and why we wanted to include the Postal team. So Ben, I'll let you touch on that a little bit, and then we can sort of zoom back out to the big picture of all of this as opposed to the tools themselves.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And the companies that we're working with and that use our site, at maximum efficiency are taking the concepts that they have online and moving them offline. They're taking things that they've been able to do from a personalization standpoint online and working with us to figure out how to add personalization offline. Maybe it's something as simple as a QR code. Maybe it's something as simple as a branded box with a note. So, the companies that are thinking about kind of that omni-channel strategy are the ones that are ultimately having the best success.
I think we touched on this a little bit already, but I think the big thing obviously for you guys, Ben, is you touched a lot on the platform and picking something that connects to tools. I think to your point, you guys connect to a bunch of different software versus being sort of like, we're this independent agnostic thing, right?
Yeah, that's totally right. We want people to be able to work where they're comfortable working. We don't want to necessarily have, only allow people to use our platform on our actual platform. We want them to be able to go into HubSpot, and when they're utilizing HubSpot workflows, be able to quickly incorporate a postal send. We want them to be able to, if they're looking at a contact within HubSpot, be able to use one of the CRM cards on the right-hand nav to quickly be able to send something relevant to a contact. So we've built the ability to add automation to HubSpot, to Outreach, to SalesLoft. Marketo will be live in a couple weeks, but it's a really simple process. We have a screenshot here that shows what it looks like within the postal platform, right? In the postal platform, you basically set up the naming convention, you choose the item you want to send, and you choose the message that you want to send the recipients. And you can set it up so it's, you can set it and forget it. We can set up messages that have variables so that it gets sent out to, with the recipient's name, that it gets sent out from the actual sales rep or marketing individual. And then within HubSpot, as the example here, and the other sites are similar, within HubSpot, you'd go into the workflow tool, you'd set up your workflow as you normally would. The example that I always give that is perfect for this page, this is a very simple example, but a deal goes from prospect to closed won. We set up an automated trigger so that every client gets a bottle of wine when that occurs. And maybe they get a note, a handwritten note to go along with that bottle of wine. But it's one of those things that you can set up within Postal and then basically set it and forget it. But you can get much more kind of focused and much more detailed in how you set up those enrollment triggers. You can focus on companies over a certain dollar amount. You can focus on certain funnels. So if, a certain action has taken place with a specific contact, that specific contact will be moved to this funnel and they'll get, a box of coffee or a box of cookies. You really have the ability to get really creative with how you set up that automation within HubSpot. And the way that HubSpot is set up, they really give you the tooling to make it very intuitive.
I think to your point, one of the things that we always get the most excited about is we love to make things super scalable all the time. And so one of the things that's really, I think, amazing about what you guys are doing here is sort of coming up with, here's something we want to do, here's a customer experience that we want to deliver, and we can sort of use Postal as a tool to help us deliver that customer experience. And then once we build it, we can continue to optimize on it, we can measure it, we can improve on it, as opposed to, we're on to the next campaign, we're on to the next thing, and we're just sort of like moving on from what we had set up previously. And I think that, to your point, that's why we get really excited about this as a platform, as opposed to just gifting in general. And I think if we jump to sort of the next slide on this one, I think the biggest thing that we're seeing is the gifting isn't just in that marketing bucket anymore. We're seeing some of the sales teams we work with doing really cool target account prospecting, leveraging automations when, Postal connects into Outreach, if you can connect into SalesLoft. And so you're sort of already engaging in some of this target account prospecting and being able to layer in something for deals that have gone cold, things that are halfway through the cycle, or generating a conversation with a key account that you just sort of can't get to with any other strategy. And we're also seeing some really cool use cases on the customer success side as well, whether it's managing for upcoming renewals and making sure that you're top of mind, working with, if you have a change of your POC or your champion at one of these orgs. We see people doing really cool gifting use cases there and automating that into their process. And also working through any beta testing, new features, getting people sort of into the programs that you're working on. And I think marketing, thinks of this stuff a lot, but I think there's tons and tons of use cases across both sales, customer success, and some other departments as well.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. One of the things that we've been really kind of laser focused on is, how do we give the companies that are utilizing our tool, with whether they're integrated with HubSpot, Outreach, SalesLoft, or whether they're using our tool kind of independently, but how do we add some unique personalization so that, everything doesn't appear to be sent with little thought or without any thought at all? So we've built unique ways, and I mentioned this earlier, and I'll mention it again in a little bit. We've built unique ways to incorporate personalization in our sends and do it in a scalable way. We're going to be adding more capabilities focused around this over the next 2 months that we're super excited about. But virality is a big deal. We think that if we're really hyper focused on personalization, and Connor can talk about something that we sent his way that I think hit home for him. But we want to make sure that everybody who opens a gift from us takes notice of that gift, whether it's the actual item, whether it's some piece of personalization that was attached to it, whether it's the gift email that was sent prior to the actual receiving the item. We want to make sure that that personalization is incorporated one way or another in everything that we send.
I think some of what you touched on here, Ben, right, is like the ability to have that be templated and reused. I think some of the things that we see a lot, especially with like RevOps teams and different sales support structures, is there's a ton of value in actually going and building. We always sort of describe them as like arrows in the quiver for your sales and prospecting teams. And I think this can be another thing that you're adding in where you sort of have a template that your sales team can go and use. They can reference it in some of the technologies that they're already working with, and you're going to be sort of integrated. So for them, it's just a matter of clicking and saying, great, let me sort of add a physical experience in line with the digital prospecting that I'm already doing. And that can be something you can sort of serve up to them and create for those folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it can be even simpler than that, right? I think you can, when you're thinking about what to send somebody, and this is kind of semi-physical because it's an e-card, but rather than sending, we wanted everybody on this call to be well caffeinated. That's why we sent out the coffee. But rather than and I'll talk about this example in a second. But we've seen companies be able to send out a charitable gift card that the recipient can spend on any charity that they ultimately want. We use a tool called Charity Navigator to allow them to choose from 1.8 million charities. And while it's not difficult to send somebody a charitable gift card, just the thought that you're thinking about what they want to spend those dollars on, as opposed to sending them something really specific that you've just decided that they want to spend dollars on, it goes a long way. And that helps whether you're looking to, get a prospect on the phone, or upsell a current prospect, or renew a current prospect. I think that's a really easy, efficient way to generate some interest that you wouldn't have been able to generate before.
And I think this is actually how we first came in contact with Postal, myself and sort of the AA team, is we got one of these boxes. I should have grabbed mine. It's somewhere around here. And I could have actually done some show and tell. But the Postal team had sent us one of these leading up to the inbound with HubSpot this year, sort of a partner, and said, hey, you guys came to our session. Here's this really cool box. And it was something where we opened it, we had personalized content in there, we had cookies in there, and it was really this experience where we went from, oh yeah, there's this company, we went to their webinar, that was cool, to, whoa, this is really interesting, this is really amazing, we should deliver this to our customers, and we should help our customers deliver this type of experience to the folks that they work with. And I think the opportunity to add delight into that general experience is huge. And I think being able to do that in a way where you can plan that campaign, you can plan that program, and you can build it and then execute it against it continuously is really where it differentiates versus something that you're just going to do this quarter or this month.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point. A few things to note here, right? When it comes to a few things that we found that I think companies have made mistakes on in the past, especially this time of year. I saw a great post about this on LinkedIn last year when we were kind of like figuring out what direction we needed to head in as a company. A few marketing leaders on LinkedIn were having a conversation about their office and all of the things that they received from their vendors. right? And so they were all talking about how they were all basically the same, how there was little thought that went into it. Maybe it's some food, maybe it's a branded, like some swag that a company would send them with the company who's doing the sending their logo on it, right? And so these marketers were talking about how, like, every time they received some of that, they just throw it in their closet or throw it in the trash or give it to their kids to play with. We found doing little things like, instead of putting your logo when you send out an item to a potential prospect or client, put their logo on it, put their name on it. In the case of this send, although it has our logo on it, Tara works for Postal. When we sent this out to Connor, it had his name and Aptitude 8 as the logo. And then you can do little things that aren't necessarily expensive at all in terms of adding personalization. Sometimes it might not be any added cost. You can add a QR code for almost no dollars that links to a video that you can, put on your phone, that has a customized message to the recipient you're sending this to. In this case, we sent a little handheld device that a partner of ours developed, a company called You Via Us, who's a great partner of ours out in the West Coast. But they put in a little handheld device, and Tara actually left a customized message for Connor. That can be done without the handheld device. It can be done with a QR code that all recipients can easily access on their cell phone, and it costs almost nothing.
And I think it's, to your point, right? Like a lot of people, especially I think people here, right? If it was experienced like Vidyard or other tools to be able to do this, you're already doing this in email, you're already doing this in other channels. And so I think that the leap to be able to extend this to some of your physical gifting, I think the value is already known, and it's really the technological problem of like, that sounds really challenging. And I think to your point, there's lots of ways to do this that you don't have to reinvent the wheel to go and deliver this. You can sort of take the idea and the experience you want to deliver and sort of work with a partner like you guys to make that happen.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So I touched on this a little bit at the outset, which is my fault for having it in here twice. But I think I touched on some of the renewals and some of the areas that you can use that. There's some use cases that you guys have in here, though, that I think are interesting, that probably are worth exploring, Ben.
Yeah, we did hit on renewals. We hit on upsells, top of the funnel. One of the things that we're seeing a ton of that isn't necessarily related to ABM, but we're seeing a lot of companies use gifting as a way to engage their employees. We see them, maybe it's a swag box that goes to every new hire. Maybe it's a bottle of wine or a different item. We have a client now that they allocate $15 a week to every employee to be sent something, right? And so, something little like that goes a long way, though. And they're sending, like, one week they sent a coloring book and crayons that, covered a specific topic. The next week they sent a little knickknack that was relevant to something they had been discussing as a company. The next week they sent a book that they wanted everybody to read as an org. There's so many different things that can be done to help engagement from a client and a current employee standpoint.
Actually, something you just touched on, man, that I think is really interesting, and I'm just thinking to like remind myself to talk to you guys about this later. I think we send new employees welcome kits every single time, and it's totally manual. We set it up every time. We have to go to the post office and mail it. I actually think we have a pile of like pullovers somewhere that we do constantly, and that sounds amazing. And I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like, again, think of it as like the marketing closet in the cloud, right? So many companies are doing that, and it's so much harder now because you don't have addresses, you don't have home addresses. Everybody's working at home. Obviously, when it's your employee, you do have the home addresses. But one of the pieces of functionality that we've built into the platform is the ability to send anything to a recipient if you just have their email address. They'd get an email from you that actually comes from your Gmail. We offer the ability to integrate your Gmail into the platform, so that when you send something out, it doesn't look like spam. It's actually coming from the sender. And the recipient gets we call it a gift email, and they can go in, and a lot of you that were on the call, you saw what this looks like with the link that we sent out. The splash page is similar with the gift email. You enter in your address and then you hit accept, and it only our client charged for the send. They're not charged for any sends that don't actually take place, which some companies do, which seems nuts to me. But we have a ton of companies that come to us with email addresses. We just did a big send this morning for an event company that's becoming a virtual event company. They're sending out 300 items that are similar to the box that we showed earlier. They only had email addresses for all their prospects and current clients. And so we sent out a gift email to each of them, and we're seeing, I think the click-through rate so far has been about 70% in terms of who's been sent and who's actually accepted the gift. And that goes a long way for the company that's doing the sending. And they also have those addresses to use for later.
For sure. I think if we jump ahead, I think one of the things that I thought was so pertinent about this particular conversation was not only with you have the holidays coming up, but 2020 has been a pretty weird year for everybody. Everyone's working from home now. Everybody is having these brand new and unique experiences all over the place. And one of the things that I think a lot about, and I think when you guys I originally sent this box, but I get asked all the time about different folks we work with and the different marketers that we support of, hey, what are you guys seeing across the different accounts that you're supporting, and what's working for people? And I think one of the things that I see is this big trend that's happened is 9 months ago, most people didn't know how to use QR codes, right? If you sent a QR code to a CRO at a large organization, like they probably don't know what it is and they don't know what they're supposed to do with it. And it sort of causes immediate confusion. I think what shifted is everyone's now scanning QR codes off of menus. Everything's trying to become more touchless. People are getting trained in that experience. And I think it's a big shift from not dissimilar from, no one really has a smartphone, and maybe people have Blackberries, to everyone really has a smartphone in their pocket that can do amazing things. And I think this is another major shift where QR codes are more impactful now than they ever have been, because you can reach an audience that knows what to do with them, and you can tie that into your tracking performance, drive them to a landing page, drive them to a personalized video, like you mentioned, Ben, where you can sort of combine some of those sales and marketing video tactics with that physical experience. And I think that's something that creates an incredibly unique experience with your company.
Yeah, absolutely. Do people still have Blackberries?
I don't even know if BlackBerry's still around, to be honest with you. I think they are, probably, right?
I'm reading a book called Blitzscaling right now. That's a really good book if
I'm
anybody
familiar.
has read it. But so they talk about it. Like, I think the BlackBerry was eventually sold for something like outrageous. Like, at one point they were worth like an ungodly amount of money, billions. And I think they sold over the past like 2 years to Verizon or one of the main players for something crazy like $100 million. They lost 99%, 99.5% of their market cap. So I think they're around, but barely, like very barely.
Apparently their stock's up 44% yesterday for some big
Wait,
deal.
BlackBerry stock?
BlackBerry stock, yeah. We
I'm wrong.
We can talk about BlackBerry for hours, I'm sure.
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking of Nokia.
Somebody. But here's the thing, BlackBerry and Nokia now in your head, you're like, yeah, like people who lost.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that. I don't know. I'm obviously speaking very unintelligently about BlackBerry. That's I'll give myself homework to go in and figure out who I was referring to. So here, I'm glad we found this GIF. Did you guys remember this, Connor? Did you see this on? I think this was on MSNBC.
Oh, it's everywhere. It was awesome.
Yeah, he was doing a little hit here, and his kid came in dancing, and then the other kid came in scooting. But yeah, no, there's always. I still hear this a lot about individuals that are companies that are scared to send things to people's addresses, home addresses, right? They think it's an intrusion of privacy, but the line is so blurred at this point. People are all working from home, and or not everybody, but a lot of people are working from home, and people are very willing to give their home addresses now, whereas in the past they weren't, because they want to receive the items, right? There's no office for them to get items at. There's no office address for them to give. So, we've sent out a bunch of surveys to recipients about kind of that privacy issue and whether they're willing to give their address. And overwhelmingly, they're willing to give their home address for the right items.
I think to your point, right? I think that also is a major shift where people are willing to give you that home address. And before they would have been like, this makes me a little uncomfortable. Like, I'll just pick it up at work. And you sort of have this, similarly the QR code side, right? You have this unprecedented opportunity to get direct mail and contact information for folks you're trying to reach, and they're very willing to give it to you.
Yep, that's exactly right.
And I think on this, I think that the other thing we're seeing a lot, right? Everyone's at home all day. I was doing an interview just before this and talking to a new hire, and they were talking about sort of an inside sales experience they previously had, and they were remote and working from home, and they didn't know anybody in their city. And I think that this like echoes on people are craving for opportunities to connect and social interactions. And we're now seeing like live comedy over Zoom, and you're seeing like different performing arts. And I think like one of the weirdest experiences I've had in the pandemic is watching like last week tonight with John Oliver, and it's like in his home, and there's no audience, no one laughs, and it's I just think about that of like, man, this guy's sitting here and he's used to being in front of a room of people and just like talking and recording and pausing for laughter, and there's no one there. And I think on that note, right, everyone's looking for the opportunity for connection, and everyone's craving the social interaction, and you have an opportunity to deliver that experience to them and create events with some physical gifts that I think create that type of experience that people are craving. Have you guys seen people, and what types of things have people done? I know we've seen like virtual wine tastings and things like that, but obviously you guys have a much more broader experience set than we do.
Yeah. We see a ton of that. And so like, on our side, we see a bunch of companies sending alcohol from our site to do a wine tasting, to do a mixology class, or a mixology session. But companies are getting really creative about it, right? Again, for not only for their own employees, but also for prospects and top clients. They have all this big budget that they had for events. A lot of events, companies that have event groups, they're looking for ways to spend that money, and they're looking at different unique ways to do it. A few other examples that we've done and we've seen done that have worked out really well, that we've seen an olive oil tasting, a chocolate making, a cooking class where all of the items are sent out ahead of time, or an Instacart gift certificate is sent out with a list of items that they should order. We're actually a month away from offering those capabilities on our site too. So just making it a one-stop shop where you can go and set up an event for 5 to 100 people that is unique. And we were sending out so many items for this sole purpose. We thought, gosh, we might as well just build in the capabilities in the platform to actually host it in our world.
I think extending from that, if we jump ahead, and I think this is something you talked a lot about, but that like the blur between your online and offline experience is kind of going away. And that the ability to look at your CRM data, look at your marketing automation data, and deliver those experiences powered by a lot of that. Most people think about that on the digital space, but I think the opportunity to be able to deliver that in an offline and physical capacity is new, and I think it can be a point of significant differentiation.
Yeah, I totally. I think that's exactly right. And again, the differentiation that's important now is very different from the differentiation that was important a year ago. So yeah, I think tangible items are huge now. Doing something unique, making it an omni-channel campaign. I think it really goes a long way with both prospects and now current customers that you're looking to renew or upsell.
Cool. Well, we touched on a bunch of stuff. I want to open it up for questions. Obviously, we talked a lot about both philosophically and timing wise, why this stuff's super important and some of the practical extensions. But if anyone has sort of specific questions on how to execute on this, what types of programs we're seeing working, anything that we might be able to answer, we're more than happy to do so.
Yeah, and I'm happy to give other examples of things that aren't actually accurate. I have to go figure out what company.
We'll wing it. We'll tell stories about different companies.
Yeah.
It'll be different ones,
Yeah, I'll send out a note to everybody replacing BlackBerry with a company that actually was used in the example.
Cool. Something came in around a minimum budget for something to be effective. I think, Ben, if you want to take a first stab at that, you guys see a bunch of that, and I'm happy to speak to it as well. But for how much you need to spend for something to actually have an impact.
Yeah, Kiri, honestly, I don't know that there's a number that I can give you. It totally depends on what you're looking to accomplish. But you can get really creative. We've worked with a few companies recently that wanted to spend no more than $25 per item that is sent to each individual. So $25 per recipient, right? And we came up with some really creative ways for them to get personal. One example that comes to mind, and we'll use the box example that we showed earlier that had Tara's name on it. A box of cookies, right? With a great wooden box, 3 cookies, one $10 Amazon card, a QR code to add personalization for the individual you're sending it to, $25 a send. And it was unbelievably effective and impactful. So I don't know that there's a specific minimum budget. I think it depends what you want to accomplish, who you're sending it to, how many people you're sending it to. And then you can get a little creative to cut some of those costs.
I think to extend on that, I also think that it's less about the dollar value that you're giving to them. And I think it's sort of that age-old adage, right? Of like, it's not the dollar amount that counts, but the thought. I think going as far as to say, I'm going to send you something physical. Here's something I'm thinking about, give you an opportunity to connect with somebody. That's something you can deliver really inexpensively. And I think there's definitely a sweet spot, between like a $25 and $100 per recipient, where you can have, increasing amounts of impact. And then over that, it probably starts to plateau. But I think that the baseline to try something out can be really, really minimal to see if this is something that'll work for you. And I am very confident that regardless of what space you're operating in, everyone loves mail. And that's why everyone loves Amazon, is it's like somebody doing facilitated Christmas. And everyone loves to get stuff. And so, I receive hundreds and hundreds of emails a day. I've received very few physical letters that are addressed to me and aren't like coming from, a bill or a magazine. And so it's always something I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Like, what's this all about? And I think that that's pretty differentiated.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Something from Tracy, Ben, on tactical and concrete ideas and specific campaigns with measurable ROI. I have some ideas, but I can go first if you want me to. It's up to you.
Yeah, no, if you're ready, jump in and I'll throw some thoughts based on your answer.
Cool. So Tracy, the biggest things that I've seen, I know that you're probably thinking about this from a HubSpot lens as well. So I'll probably speak to that, which is something we've seen that's really, really interesting with measurable ROI is back to that QR code component, which is if you're sending out direct mail and you have a QR code that's in it, and you can track back the visits back to your landing page. So if you're sending out anything, the person receives it, they scan the QR code, they come to your landing page, you have all the analytics data back in the landing page itself. And I think that solves a lot of the black box of direct mail that gets hard because you send things out and you have no idea whether somebody received them or whether they engage with them, and having them have a claim to the offer that takes them somewhere else is really interesting. And then obviously you can use HubSpot campaigns themselves to source how many MQLs and SQLs and deals and closed won customers did we generate from this using that campaign reporting. And we've seen that work a lot with individualized QR codes that are using UTMs, any sort of physical experience that's driving back to something digital that you can track. We've also seen some success outside of that, where we've had salespeople, to sort of Ben's point about integrating with Outreach and SalesLoft, have postal steps in the campaigns that they're running. And then we're sort of seeing what's the performance of that person in that specific sequence and what's the performance of that sequence or cadence or whichever tool you're using's language. And you can look at the performance of that with those steps and how many people went through those steps. You can definitely do the measurable ROI piece. And depending on your deal size, I mean, we see this as huge with, we have customers that have, 6-figure deal sizes and will spend $100 per recipient in an ABM campaign for some of these.
Yeah, I think those are all great points, Connor, and I don't have a hell of a lot to add to that, aside from the fact that, we want to make everything as trackable as possible, right? So, we want to understand when people have received items, if they will click on a QR code, awesome, right? Because we know that not only have they received it, but they've opened it and they've actually paid attention to it, right? We can track things really well to people's hands. It gets a little tricky after that, but there are little things that can be done, as Connor alluded to earlier, that make it a little less tricky to really gauge the impact and the ROI.
Something Tracy asked for a specific QR code app in conjunction with Postal. I don't have an offhand answer to that, and I don't know if you have a recommendation, Ben, or if that's something you guys are just doing natively. But I can find out from our team and get back to you as well, Tracy.
We do it natively for direct mail. So we have a way, when we put together each piece of direct mail, there's literally in the navigation, you have the ability to add a QR code. And you can type in exactly where you want to send them in that QR code. For our more personalized items or gifts, I have a partner that I typically use to do all that. It's an awesome little company that's based out of San Diego called Ringpin. And, I like doing something a little more unique with the QR codes. I like putting the recipient's logo in the QR code, right? It doesn't cost anything, but it's nice to kind of see your company's name in that QR code. So I like to put a little personal touch on it, and Ringpin's been great about allowing me to do that.
And I don't know, Tracy asked about tracked in Postal. I think we've typically seen it actually tracked on the HubSpot side for the traffic analytics, but I think on your guys' end, I'm not familiar with Ringpin. I just checked out their site though. It looks very cool.
Yeah, and on our site we have trackable metrics as well, so we can do cost per touch. We have metrics that are available there, so you can gauge the efficacy of a campaign. We aren't tracking the QR code on the site yet, but when we send out campaigns that have QR codes, we send out the analytics as well.
And if you want to jump ahead in our slides, I think both of our contact information is here as well. Obviously, anything postal related, Ben's probably your best bet. If you have questions around different campaigns or setting something up like this, we're more than happy to talk to you. So is Ben. Honestly, we're both happy to talk to you about anything.
Yeah. Any Aptitude A questions, send over to me. Cool. I got it. Connor's going to be skiing.
I'm gonna be skiing, but I'm trying to plan on how I have this theory that there are lodges that have great Wi-Fi, and I can like just do one. I'll do a webinar, do a run, come back, but I don't know if that'll pan out. That's my hope.
Totally think so. And you could put your AirPods in while you're skiing. It's
Exactly. We'll
fine.
go down, run calls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for attending. If you do have any questions at all, feel free to hit up either or both of us at any time about any and all things, and we would be delighted to talk to you.
Thanks, Connor. Enjoyed it, man.
Likewise. Bye, guys.